All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Tosca Lichtenheld, and I lead Sofar Ocean's government business. Sofar is an ocean tech startup, and we do ocean data collection and ocean data modeling. I'm joined this morning by U.S. National Ice Center Operations Officer, Mike Lattin. Mike, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. So throughout today's webinar, we'll be hearing from Mike about the role of the U.S. National Ice Center and the data collection and data analysis that they do. We'll talk about SOFAR's partnership with the Ice Center, and then we'll hear about Mike's journey last summer to the Arctic. And finally, we'll close out with some questions and answers. So if you have any questions you'd like to submit, feel free to use the Q&A button that you should see on your screen to submit your questions using the text box. And you can submit those at any point in time during the webinar. We'll be reviewing them, and then we'll get to them at the end. All right, let's get started. Mike, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also about the U.S. National Ice Center?
Sure, thank you. So the U.S. National Ice Center is it's a unique organization. It's a tri-service agency composed of NOAA, Navy, and Coast Guard personnel. And the essential mission that we have is the operational battle space awareness of sea ice. So while our work is incredibly scientific in nature, we are focused on the operational impacts of assets and personnel operating in and around sea ice. Obviously, there are many different flavors of people that operate in the sea ice. So there's a lot of vested interest between NOAA, the Coast Guard, and Navy. So under one roof, under the U.S. National Ice Center, we can provide seamless support to any one of those agencies in order for them to accomplish mission objectives. We're a pretty small organization. We are about 45 personnel in total, located in Suitland, Maryland. Yeah, we have a variety of different customers. Again, fleet assets, surface ships, icebreakers, scientific initiatives around the sea ice as funded by National Science Foundation. And we handle both the Arctic, the Antarctic, and any other coastal ice conditions. So seasonal ice that forms around the Great Lakes, the Mid-Atlantic, anything that can affect commerce lanes or shipping traffic, and there'll be impacts with regards to sea ice. We can make sure and enable safe maritime operations and make sure that those mariners return home safely.
It's incredible, truly a global mission. Can you tell us a little bit about what your role is at the Ice Center?
Absolutely. So my role as the operations officer is we have a reach back capability in which we deliver products and tailored decision aids out to customers that are operating in and around the ice. Obviously, the ice is a very harsh environment, so we want to keep those mariners and their equipment and the vessels safe at sea. So we characterize sea ice in order to enable their mission success. That can include any sort of aids to navigation. If they can take advantage of fractures or leads or openings in the ice like polynyas, we will make them aware of that and then tell them how they can use that to their tactical advantage when they're operating around the sea ice.
Awesome. So I'll transition now just briefly to talk about how SOFAR has partnered with the Ice Center. So obviously the Ice Center has this global mission set. They have the ability to operate in extremely harsh conditions in the polar regions. And at SOFAR, we build ocean sensors. They're called spotter buoys. And we wanted to see how these ocean data collectors could be used to study sea wave ice interactions. And the Ice Center has this capability to traverse these extreme regions. And so we formed what's called a Cooperative Research and Development Agreement, or a CRADA. And what's really cool about a CRADA is each organization that's part of this partnership really leans into the strengths that they have and their unique capabilities to partner on something that neither would be able to achieve on their own. So in the case of Sofar, we never would have been able to test our equipment in the Chukchi Sea without partnering with the Ice Center. And then hopefully in the case of the Ice Center, you're able to get some data and use some new equipment that you wouldn't have had access to before. So that was the goal behind our CRADA. And like I mentioned, Sofar builds these small, they're about the size of a basketball, wave buoys, and they use GPS displacement to look at the full wave spectrum. And they're also equipped with sea surface temperature probes. So when those buoys are deployed, the data gets transmitted over Iridium satellite and is accessible through a web dashboard. So this is not one of the buoys, clearly based on the location that we provided to the Ice Center, but this just shows what a data dashboard looks like for any of the buoys that are deployed. And Sofar has these buoys all over the world. We've got about 550 globally right now. And for the first time, we were able to deploy into the polar regions by partnering with the Ice Center. So full disclosure, this is not a up-to-date screenshot. This is from last summer, but what's pretty cool is it shows our global network of buoys, including, circled in red, the buoys that were deployed by the Ice Center last summer. And as you can see, they are way farther north than any of the other ones. And here's just a fun picture of a buoy in the ice. So that leads us to, Mike, your journey to the Arctic. Would love to hear about that. Tell us everything about what your role was on the Healy, what vessel you're using, what your mission is up there, and then how you used the Sofar buoys.
Sure, thank you. So one of the things I guess I need to give a little context on is we have a specialized mission set where if there is a need for sort of that on-demand, really analyst in the loop, helping to navigate the ship in and around the ice, and reach back support is not sufficient enough for that. We will deploy ice analysts to help facilitate that navigation. Typically, the Ice Center supports the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Healy and the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Polar Star. Those are both two very robust icebreakers in the Coast Guard fleet. So last summer, I was the ice analyst that was sent on board Healy as they navigated up through the ice. Initially, when we started the mission, the ice edge was seasonally retreating. So we used that to gain access to whatever we needed to do up there. And then the second part of that mission was scientific initiatives from the Chukchi Sea all the way up to the North Pole. So as I said before, we do a lot of support for National Science Foundation initiatives. National Science Foundation had a very robust crew from academia that was collecting oceanographic data, biological data, sedimentary data, all kinds of things that will really characterize the Arctic for years and years of research to come. Obviously, the Healy is unique in its capabilities, so the National Science Foundation utilized the Healy in order to get through the ice in order to obtain the scientific data that way. While on board, I was responsible for ensuring or enabling the safe navigation of the ship through the ice. That was usually done through daily analysis. What does the ice conditions look like? Are there any sort of navigational aids in the ice that the ice is allowing us to give it? Or better yet, is there anything that the weather or ice is not going to give us, or potentially put us in danger of being beset or stuck in the ice, which is obviously an icebreaker captain's worst nightmare. So able to use the Sofar buoys, obviously the data up there is extremely sparse. So typically the NIC relies heavily on satellite imagery as sort of a ground truth of what the ice conditions are doing. Usually that's in the ballpark of about 1 to 2. The energy efficient lights. That's usually about 1 to 2 satellites images a day. So we rely on modeling to fill in those gaps on what the ice is doing. And those models are very reliant on in situ data that is being fed into those models in order to verify their performance. A model is only as good as its verification, and if it can be a sort of garbage in, not garbage out, we need to be able to verify that those models are actually performing quickly. And that's where the Sofar buoys kind of came in. So being able to deploy these very quickly, I was able to use the data that came on there, not only the drifts, but the sea surface temperature, wave action, where I could verify these models that were going to give a deterministic output and forecast what those sea ice conditions were going to be, and able to make sure that the model's performance was sufficient enough that I could use it operationally. So that was a key part of it. Again, usually in open water to determine, you can kind of see in the photo there, that was some of the lighter ice concentrations that we saw. So easily navigable, but obviously very dynamic. When the ice is loose like that, it can move significant amount of distance in a short period of time. So again, using that model data, or sorry, that spotter data to verify models. And then later on in the mission, as the sea ice began to refreeze as we exited, that data was key to kind of determine on the formation of new ice. So new ice is one of those things that it's a thinner, it's kind of hard to see in satellite data. But we can see, based on the wave buoy action and the sea surface temp, okay, yeah, it looks like the water that these buoys were located in is beginning to freeze over. And obviously that's tactically relevant for our navigation and where we want to operate. So yeah, that's in a nutshell. I hope that answers the question as well.
Definitely. Thank you. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about how the conditions were changing as you went farther and farther north?
Sure. So coming up through the Bering Strait, we encountered the first year ice, or the seasonal ice will usually will form all the way down into the Bering Strait in some areas around Alaska. So the Healy, for obvious reasons, they navigated up when the ice was in its greatest level of retreat. So as we went up there in the early months, the first year ice began to melt away. And then when we reached about, I would say 78 to 79 north, we encountered the multi-year ice, which is the ice that does not melt. So now you're talking the very old ice, the ice that is very thick. It's very dense. It's hard to break through. So the Healy is a medium class icebreaker. So it's very capable of handling the ice conditions that we saw, but not without trial and tribulations. So when we got to the multi-year ice, our progress slowed significantly. There was a lot of, it's an artistic, but it's also a very crude method of ice breaking. Basically, if you stop going forward, you back the ship up and you ram it until you start going forward again. So between that, it was the mantra, and the thing we always preached was patience. Obviously, ice breaking is a very patient process. You don't want to get yourself tied up in a situation because you're trying to maintain or you're under this impression of urgency. So there was a lot of, again, tactical patience, wait to allow what the ice is going to give you. And if you find yourself in a rut or someplace where you're having trouble making forward progress, just take a deep breath, reassess, and go forward with a sound reasoning in mind. So the crew there was absolutely nothing but professional. They were quite impressive to watch on a day-to-day basis. It was great being engaged with them, and I think that between the relationship that we had with the Healy crew, we were obviously able to get where we needed to go and accomplish all of our initiatives.
Incredible. So changing gears a little bit as we head towards the end of this webinar, wanted to talk a little bit about some of the data that the buoys collected. So as Mike mentioned, sea surface temperature was one of the data points that were collected. And just as a quick comparison to show you how a spotter might look like when it's farther south, not so deep in the ice, versus really getting to be a bit deeper in the ice. This buoy shows very, very clear diurnal warming patterns, whereas on this one, you see it's a lot more variable. This one is spot 1938, which is down here outside of the ice. And then this one is spot 1929, which as you can see was deeper into the ice. So just one of the interesting data points. Anything you want to add on sea surface temperature, Mike?
No, so the rule of thumb is generally 28 degrees Fahrenheit for seawater is typically the formation of new ice. So again, it was one of those things where when we were coming down and we expected new ice to form, we kind of wanted to get a good picture of, hey, when are we going to exit the ice? So looking at those sea surface temps and comparing it with model data, we were able to determine where there was probable ice, even though we couldn't see it on satellite imagery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then also just quickly, some of the other data that we were pulling from these buoys, wave energy spectra, obviously in the ice, a lot less energy there. One of the challenges I wanted to talk about from the Sofar side was these buoys are solar powered. And so when you get up really far north, during the summer, it's not a problem at all. You've got almost 24 hours a day of sun. But as you head towards fall and then winter, if you're relying on solar power, it really is a challenge. And so we did see these buoys go offline in October. We have not heard from them since, but I remain optimistic they'll come back on once the ice clears. They are very durable, but that was part of the experiment of putting them up there, was to see how long will they go offline? Will they come back online? If so, how long does it take them to come back online? And this was just a study we did regarding how far north can the buoys operate continuously. And like I mentioned at the beginning, we had never previously deployed them this far north before. So we know they can operate continuously at 58 degrees north, but where Mike was deploying these was, I think the highest was 77.7 degrees.
I think that was the last one. Yeah, 77 north.
78, yeah. So that's a vast difference. And we had seen before around 4 weeks of hibernation at 62 degrees north. And even if it's covered a little bit by ice, usually, at 62 degrees north, that's not going to stay covered for too long. So it's still an experiment and it's ongoing. But one of the things we're excited to try out for this coming summer is we do have an upgraded version of the buoy that has more compute power, more battery power. It also is equipped with a barometer. It's designed to be more durable. So we'll see how those fare. And one of the things that I'm excited about is it also has a GPS sleep function. So we can pre-program it to go into power saving mode. And that will hopefully allow the buoy to last a lot longer, even in very extreme conditions. And with that, I will pause things to turn things over to Q&A. While I do that, Mike, any other thoughts you want to share?
No, not off the top of my head right now. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so someone asked a question around harvesting the motion of the buoy. So frankly, in these kinds of conditions, the buoys themselves, they're not moving very much. So actually, solar with a backup battery is a pretty good source of power for these. All right, and feel free to submit additional questions if you have any. And while we wait for those other questions to come in, I have one for you. Mike, will you be going back on the Healy this summer?
Actually, it won't be me this time. I will have a team of 2 USNIC analysts who will be splitting the mission. So the Healy is an annual mission. They usually go up around the same time each year. The intent is for 2 of our analysts to split duties.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so I won't have the opportunity to go up there, but I'm really looking forward to sharing the experience. Obviously, it's a bucket list kind of once in a lifetime thing, and the analysts who are slated to go up are very excited and ready to apply some of the lessons learned and some of the stuff that I did and take it even one step further in terms of environmental support.
Awesome. All right, we've got another question from someone who's actually heading to the Chukchi Sea next week. Awesome. Do you have any advice for deployment and data processing with the spotter buoys?
No, the biggest thing is obviously high latitude communication is that's a real thing. That's a real limitation. I personally did not see issues utilizing the dashboard or getting data when the bandwidth was available. There were times where the ship just got too far north to be in any sort of communications coverage. But essentially, it was the data packets and the stuff that you're getting off the buoys. They were low bandwidth and pretty easy to access.
Great. We've got a question about most of the NOAA buoys have a fancy port to keep water out. How is the Sofar barometer ported? So to be frank, I don't know the exact answer to this question, but we have really done a lot of testing for water intrusion with the buoys, and we also have a live monitoring function which you can view on the dashboard to see the health of the buoy. So there's a humidity detector inside the hull. So if there is any kind of water intrusion, you are able to see that on your dashboard and, you know, take into account that something might have happened with the hull, but that's unusual. And I'll follow up with the questionnaire separately once I am able to have a better answer to that. All right, we've got just a few minutes here. So if you have any last questions, now is your last chance. All right, I don't think I see anything else. So thank you so much, Mike. Really appreciate your time. Thank you everyone for joining. And with that, we'll close things out. Thank you.
Thank you.